All righty, welcome back from the episode of Two Plain Sports. Today it is Wednesday, September 14th, middle of the week, almost start of week 2 of the NFL and week 3 of college football already, which is kind of hard to even believe that it's already going to be the third game. Last game that's out of conference for Oklahoma coming up against Nebraska, which is quite a big game and something that Oklahoma is going to have. It's going to be a pretty tall task. So what we're going to do today and talk about is we're going to do a pre-game or a game preview of the upcoming game. And we're going to be talking a lot of Nebraska football and what they are going to pose against Oklahoma, the challenges and where OU can expose them and take advantage, and they should win the game at the end of the week. And then we're also going to be talking recruiting and recapping from this past weekend. So we're going to go game preview first. And then we're going to be talking recruiting this past weekend. I know there's some people that I'm sure people were seeing on Twitter about Colton Vasek, Jordan Renaud, David Hicks, and various other players. We're going to be talking about those guys. So you're definitely going to want to stay around for the back half of the show when we talk recruiting. And so but before we get into it, we're just going to say we appreciate it. We've got an upcoming live stream on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central, a two Plains pregame show. We missed last week, but we're back. So we're going to be able to do a pregame show for about an hour, or if we have quite a few people in there, it might be an hour and a half. It just depends, since we'll be going on at 9 and the game starts at 11. We'll just see where that takes us. So we'll be talking a lot of Sooner football, what we're going to see today, and general college football talk, and anything that you guys want to discuss. And then if you have not seen on Twitter already, Heath Ozaita, we're trying to get him into the Adidas All-American Bowl game coming up in January. We need to go on Twitter at Sooner Nation, and it should be below in this video on this layout. It's Heath, #Heath 2, Adidas All-American. So go ahead, add him and tweet that hashtag, and let's try to get him out there with Joshua Bates, and that way they can play together. So be sure to do that, and it'll be in the video layout below. So we will have this up for a while, as you know, and just tweet as many times as you can so we can get that going. And then, if you're here, subscribe to the channel, like the video, stay around for Jose's in the video challenge since Brandon is not here temporarily, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And on Apple and Spotify, everything's linked in the description below. If you're going to go tweet at Heath and get him to the All-American game, follow us on Twitter as well, because we'll be tweeting about him as well. And something else that we're going to do is, I think everyone knows, or if you don't know, Oklahoma is going to be playing on the 24th against Kansas State at 7 p.m. Believe it or not, it's a Big 12 game at night. Pretty shocking, on Fox. We're going to give away a pair of tickets there. So we're going to start the contest now. We gave away tickets to one of our viewers, actually one of our members, for the last home game, the opening home game. So we sent Ian, and so hopefully we can send someone that would like to go. So if you want to enter into that, we'll be doing it over the next few videos. You have to be a subscriber to this channel. You have to like every video, and you have to follow us on social media. And you need to be able to comment and stay around for Jose's in the video challenge. It's still going to be tough for me to switch off Brandon and do the in video challenge, and then tweet Heath to All-American, or Heath to Adidas All-American. So that's going to be a requirement. You're going to have to tweet it. I understand if some people don't. Maybe go on Facebook and do it, and that'll still count. So be sure to do that. So we'll be announcing the winner next week and try to get a couple of you guys to the game. That was a long intro. People are like, good Lord, shut up. So we're going to get into actual football talk. Obviously, Oklahoma plays Nebraska this weekend. It is going to be quite the game. And I don't care how bad Nebraska is. I still think, I've been saying for the longest time, I thought Oklahoma was going to blow out Nebraska. And my assumption was Scott Frost was still going to be here. And I thought this was the game that Scott Frost was going to get fired after. I never thought in a million years that they would lose to Georgia Southern. And he somehow amazed us, and he still did that. So now they've fired Scott Frost. They've got an interim head coach. I think this team's more dangerous. Jose, what's your take on Nebraska, and what do you think you should be watching for?
Yeah, definitely agree that they're a little bit more dangerous. I was at first the opposite to you. I thought it would be a close game simply because it's the Sooners' first road game. It's Lincoln, Nebraska. Their fans are always showing up. It's going to be a crazy environment. We're really probably going to be Oklahoma's first real test, even if they've had a stretch of poor performances. They're going to get up for this one. I have no doubt about it. We hear Coach Venables say, we're going to get everyone's game 7 mentality. It's going to be no different here. Biggest thing to look out for here outside of the offensive line, because I know it's a big concern. People are freaking out over our last video title. It's Dylan Gabriel is not to blame, and we discussed it. But the other thing to watch is going to be the defensive line. I think the defensive line over the first 2 games has been very dominant. They've kind of put a stamp to every single game and why they are in the position they are as starters. The guys that are in the 2 deep are getting their opportunities. But this is going to be the first time where they're potentially going against an O-line that can physically match up against them pretty well. I know Nebraska's O-line has not performed great, but they still put up a lot of points. So they got to move a little faster. They got to get to Casey Thompson. And again, can we stop a running quarterback? Casey's not afraid to make a play with his feet. I think those are going to be the 2 biggest things I'm going to be watching out for. Can the defensive line get to him fast enough? And can we have a linebacker get to Casey quick enough if he does decide to leave the pocket? Because we did see it last week. Schlee was his name, I believe, the quarterback for Kent State. I mean, I wouldn't say he had the best performance as a running quarterback, but he definitely made some big plays on his feet, and that's definitely something you want to avoid when you're going up against a fan base that is excited for a win, and a big win at that, and a team that has absolutely nothing to lose, with a head coach that, again, probably has nothing to lose, because if the rumors or reports, whatever you want to say, are out there, that are out there are correct, it seems like Mikey Joseph will not be the head coach after this season, and it will actually be Matt Campbell. Probably towards the end of the season, I would expect that hire to be official. If it's Matt Campbell or not, probably towards the end of the season, right before the conference championship game, just like we saw last season when Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma. Brian Kelly was making the move to LSU. It seems like that's kind of when the coaching carousel will begin.
For sure. I definitely agree that that Matt Campbell, he might not be the guy, but I don't think Mikey Joseph will end up being the guy for Nebraska. They're going to go out there and try to get the big fish like they thought Scott Frost was, except Scott Frost was one of their own, homegrown talents. But looking at the team now, is Nebraska's pass defense is horrible. I mean, they gave up 45 points to Georgia Southern. They can't block. I mean, they can't stop anyone. I mean, they're giving up 500 yards basically of total offense, and it's horrible. I mean, it's just bad. At the end of the day, I think as long as the offensive line for Oklahoma, and I am assuming that Wanya Morris is going to be able to come back, because Venables, the rumor was 2 games. Venables, made it sound like that he's close to returning, and by the time this video airs, and maybe on Thursday or something, there might be some more clarity on Wanya Morris. If he can get back, provide some protection for Dylan Gabriel, I think this is the game you're going to see where Dylan Gabriel lights it up. Not that he hasn't lit it up. I mean, he did well against Kent State, and he's thrown for 529 yards and 5 touchdowns. It's been efficient. It's not that he's been bad or anything. He just hasn't had to do it. And I think the strong part of this Nebraska defense, or stronger, is the front 7, and the secondary is going to be able to be picked apart. Marvin Mims is going to be running wild, and he's going to do probably the same thing that he did to Kent State. I know that Georgia Southern's quarterback threw a few picks against them, but I just think that Gabriel's going to protect the ball. They're going to be able to protect him, assuming that Wanya Morris is back and they can gel. I think they're going to be okay, and I think Oklahoma will win. The line right now is 11.5 points. It did open up, I think it was 15 or 16 points for Oklahoma and is now shifted, obviously quite a few points lower. I think Oklahoma probably wins by 10. But I just think that when you lose your coach that's been horrible and you knew the guy was going to get fired, you now have a guy that's a breath of fresh air and this team's got nothing to lose. And this is when I think Nebraska is going to play better than they would have with Scott Frost. But I still don't think they're going to win.
Yeah, I agree. And on Wanye, I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name anymore. It's been pronounced so many different ways since he's entered this program. But I'm going to stick with Wanye because that's how it's been pronounced recently. He is expected to be back this game, according to Venables in his press conference on Tuesday. At least that's the expectation. We'll see once we get closer to game time if there's any change. But that's, again, what the coaches are expecting for the offensive line change. I think that could definitely be a big change. I think an offensive line, and I think at this point it's not rare knowledge. Those 5 guys need to be one unit. You can't have one person make a mistake, because if one person's wrong, you're all wrong. You either all make the same mistake or you all are correct. And at the end of the day, if you all fuck up, you're somehow still right because you're picking up an assignment, essentially. I think the chemistry that was built over the fall in summer ball probably definitely was with Wanye, and not Tyler having to come in and out, or Sexton having to come in and out to try to fill in those roles. I'd be interested to see if there's any change with McCade Mettauer. He's kind of struggled a little bit. He's not been the worst, but he's definitely had his plays where he's letting guys through a little too quickly. And once we get into, again, probably this game and definitely into conference play, with the first big test being K-State, you can't have a guy on the inside let someone get easy access to Dylan, because it's tough, especially, luckily, I guess it's Dylan, the side that Dylan can see. It's not his blind side, but you never want someone just coming through almost untouched to the quarterback. With the offense, I think you hit it on the nail. I would not be surprised if Marvin has another game like last week. The one thing we do hopefully get to see is more urgency from the top. I think at first we were trying to establish the run a little too much last week, where it started to slow down the offense and the rhythm and gave a lot of momentum to Kent State. And especially from what Levy said, I think he recognized that as well. They're going to try to make a change there and be a little bit more balanced from the beginning, like we saw week one. Week one, first play was a deep bomb attempt to Marvin Mims, and it almost worked if it wasn't for the lineman coming through to pressure Dylan. So I think offense is going to have their way with this team. I just don't want to see a high scoring affair. I don't want to feel like we're seeing the Oklahoma team of the last 5 years. I'd like to see, and I think, to me, again, when we were talking about defining success before the season started, constant improvement with the defense. Can we make pivotal stops? Can we make sure we're not having to outscore a team? And by that, like Brum said last week, clearly you need more points than the other guy to win, but I don't want it to be gunslinging. I don't want to see 50 to 55. I really enjoy games like last week. And again, I understand that the offense was not prolific from the first moment they stepped on the field, but if we can go out there and score 35 points every single week and the defense can hold the opposing offense to 10 or less, that is essentially, to me, it's a perfect game. You're not going to get every single drive to score every single time, but if the defense can bend, not break, more often than not, you're more than likely going to win. With the running back situation, I think it's gotten more interesting. I'll admit it. I'll be the first to admit it. I was definitely questioning Marcus Major and how important he was going to be to this to this offense. And if the freshman or Tawi Walker could come in and start challenging for some time, I think he's, especially with last week's performance, he has definitely separated himself. I think that without a doubt, it's Eric Gray and Marcus Major, RB1 and RB2. I don't really see there being much of a change. Maybe 1 week Marcus gets a little bit more carries than Eric. Seems like Eric is still the number one from in the coach's eyes, so I really don't expect a change in that anytime soon. But I see Marcus having a big game, 2 touchdowns, especially in the red zone. Once we get there, he seems to be the guy within 20, 25 yards. And Eric Gray being the big play guy when the field's a little longer for Oklahoma. So offense should definitely have a game. Again, I just want to see this defense establish themselves against at least a physically equal team to them.
For sure. They're definitely physically they're equal. They're no longer playing against guys that, might weigh 30 pounds less than them along the offensive line and the defensive line. Yeah, and you're talking about Levy and the offense. The first game, it felt like it was a little too pass heavy. Second game, it felt a little too run heavy in the very beginning. I think we're going to finally hit that sweet spot. And they're still trying to figure it out, and they're still installing new plays. I think you're going to see this offense pull more complex plays and different schemes, and they're going to really start to kind of show the full complexity of the offense. And I think you're going to see them excel in that. I do think that the offensive line has to gel. I think they're going to need to establish the run. I want them to establish the run because especially when the offensive line is a little shaky, get those guys some confidence. Is just run, move forward and just get a good push off the offensive line. And hopefully Wanya Morris comes in with some added motivation and he brings a spark to this offensive line to really get it going. And, whenever you're mixing and matching because guys out, it's tough. So you got to give them some credit there where they were able to fill in. Looking at this Nebraska offense, Casey Thompson. So we'll start there. Casey Thompson, obviously we know he's talented. He led last year, I believe in touchdowns. I think he did for the Big 12. And he played well for Texas. He was playing hurt for part of the year, and he still excelled despite the dysfunction with Sarkisian and the Longhorns. So he's solid. In Venables mentioned that OU did recruit Casey Thompson, and that's true. Whenever looking at the transfer portal, Casey Thompson was a target for Oklahoma. Obviously, didn't come to fruition. So he's always a threat. He's a mobile guy. He definitely gave Oklahoma issues and problems in the Texas game last year. Obviously, I mean, he picked OU apart. You look at the running back. So I think this is going to be the toughest test. And for everyone that doesn't know who Anthony Grant is, and he's not a household name, he was at Florida State from 2018 to 2020. He didn't play a whole lot, mainly a kick returner, didn't really carry the ball much there. Went into the transfer portal, ended up going to JUCO, Garden City. He briefly attended Garden City, and then he ended up at New Mexico State Military Institute. He ran for 241 times for 1,730 yards and scored 18 touchdowns while he was at Nebraska Military Institute or whatever it is. He then transferred to Nebraska, and in 3 games, 69 carries, 428 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Granted, it's against Northwestern. It's against Georgia Southern. It's against, lesser competition there in North Dakota. But the guy is averaging 100 and I don't know, what is that, 130, 140, probably 140 yards a game. And he's averaging a touchdown to 2 touchdowns a game. They're going to rely heavily on him to take the burden off Casey Thompson and to keep this defensive line, OU's defensive line, away from him. So he is going to be the focal point. If you want to stop this Nebraska offense, he's the guy. And you put it on Casey Thompson to beat you. So, 428 yards in 3 games is pretty strong. And I think that they're going to rely on him heavily. So that is someone that Oklahoma is going to have to load the box up and take care of. Just like last week, they took care of Cooper. I think Cooper only had 50 yards. And if they can bottle up him for 50 yards, that's a win. You look look at their wide receiver position. The one guy is the LSU transfer, Trey Palmer, 18 catches, 231 yards. He doesn't have a touchdown. He seems to be the guy for Casey Thompson, as far as from what I've seen. I haven't watched all of Nebraska's games, but he definitely came in as a transfer, as a highly regarded guy. Maybe not overly highly regarded, but one of the instant contributors for Nebraska, and it's definitely true. So I would like to see, Woody Washington and them take away. I think they will be able to take him away. He's not overly huge. We're not dealing with someone who's 6'4", 6'5", but those are a couple of names. Obviously, those are the three names I'd be keeping an eye on. Really, the running back situation is what Oklahoma needs to stop, and I think that's where you're going to see Oklahoma put a lot of emphasis on and make Casey Thompson beat you with this Nebraska wide receiving core.
Yep, I agree with the offense. And then looking at Nebraska's defense, a name that going into the season, people expected him to have a big year was O'Shawn Mathis. I'm not sure what specific changes Mikey Joseph is going to have, but I would expect him to probably let these guys play a little bit more free. Again, they have nothing to lose. I would assume that they're going to try to give these guys an opportunity to actually sit back and just try to rush at Dylan Gabriel a couple times, and he might be the guy that will create some trouble for Oklahoma. They have a linebacker, can't remember his name real quick, Raymer. Right now he's leading their team in total tackles. So definitely a guy to look out for, especially when we're going when we're trying to hit a run. Big guy that Eric Gray and Marcus Mader are going to try to get away from. Maybe even Levy might scheme up so that they're not really running towards him and having him try to run across the field to catch up, which I don't think many linebackers will be able to keep up with either of our running backs. So their defensive side of the ball, I'm not too worried about it. Like we've been talking about, I do expect our offense to absolutely eat on them, but they don't have slouch. They don't have a team full of slouches. They have good talent. They just haven't been able to put it together. And who knows? Maybe it was all on Scott Frost. Maybe it was a little bit on the coordinators, or mostly on the coordinators, and Scott Frost just had to take the responsibility for it because he couldn't put it together. But again, to me, I already thought it was just not a scary game, but going to be closer than we all would have more than likely liked. But now that no one on that team has anything to lose, it seems it's going to be an intimidating game, and one that Oklahoma cannot just look past, because next week we have K-State, which is going to be a tough test. And if the guys are looking to K-State before they even step on the field for Nebraska, they're going to be punched in the face real quick by that team.
Yeah. And, I said, I think Oklahoma's going to win by 10 a little bit earlier. Honestly, the more I've talked about it and we've gone through it, I still think Oklahoma wins comfortably the more I've thought about it. I think 38-24 is going to be my score prediction. I think Oklahoma wins by 14. I don't think it's overly close. I think it's close for the first half. I think Oklahoma establishes them. Nebraska is going to come out with a lot of juice. The home crowd's going to be fired up, no matter if they're 1-2 with the interim head coach. But I just don't think that offensive line is going to be able to get a push against Oklahoma's defense and open up running lanes for the running back. And I think Oklahoma wins by 14. What do you think?
Yeah, I hope I have Oklahoma to cover. I think it's definitely possible. It's just going to be a tale of, can Oklahoma start off on the offense hot and coming out of halftime? I think we've seen it in both games. Coming out of halftime, can you either keep that momentum going if we do start hot in the first half? If not, if it's a game like last week where the offense starts a little slower and it's a very close game going into half, can the adjustments be made to pull away? And I think Oklahoma can. I think that's where Oklahoma will start taking advantage of this Nebraska team, is going to be in the second half. I expect a very close first half and Oklahoma taking over in the second.
Yeah, I agree. If Scott Frost was there, I'd pick Oklahoma by 21. This might be good for one touchdown for him. So luckily, Mikey Joseph, for his sake, he will not be fired after this game, because Scott Frost couldn't set the bar any lower. So that's our preview. And we're going to go into recruitment. And I just thought about the whole ticket giveaway. And if you're still watching this, not only or whenever you send your tweet out for Heath Ozaita for his All-American game, which is right below us, for either one of two of us, make sure to @twoplanesports as well on Twitter. I forgot to mention that. Be sure to do that so we have record of who actually was tweeting that. And also, just a little preview, we need to see you at the live stream as well. That's going to get you another entry as well as you do that. So that'll be Saturday at 9 a.m. Central. Okay, so recruiting talk. I know a lot of people probably just hung around for this section of this video. Sometimes people don't care for what our takes are on the actual football games, but they care about recruiting. So if that's you, here you go. We'll start with Colton Vasek or Vasek, depending on who you talk to. Twitter has been freaking out. Colton Vasek, 2023 four-star edge player from Austin, Texas, that committed to Oklahoma beginning of last month. He took a visit, not really a visit, to Texas. Obviously, he's from Austin. His dad played at Texas. He went to the game of Texas, Alabama, and he ended up going as technically a visitor because some Texas, probably grad assistant got a hold of him and said, "Here, I got some tickets for you and your buddies if you want to show up to the game." And that's exactly what he did. And I want everyone to, while people are freaking out, think about it this way. If you're 17, 18 years old, you've got a massive game in your own backyard that's 15 minutes away from your house. You're not going to go for an official visit. You're literally using them to get tickets to go watch a big game. He's locked in with Oklahoma. He's going to be making visits. I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up for the Kansas State game since it's at 7 p.m. On the 24th. I think everyone needs to take a deep breath and honestly put yourself in his shoes. I personally would go to the game just because I love football, and that's what Colton Vasek, he loves football. I don't buy into this going to flip to, Texas. I don't buy any of that. What do you think?
Well, and like you said, he lives in Austin and his dad played for the Longhorns, grew up in a Longhorn family. Probably a big surprise for all of them that he's going to be a Sooner. He said it himself. He said that there's no reason for this to be such a big deal. He's excited to play for Venables and on the Oklahoma defense. Even if it wasn't his friends, like his parents are Longhorn fans, and it ended up being a hell of a game. Even if it wasn't a hell of a game, still a big time game for him. What else are you going to do on a Saturday if that's in your backyard, right? Just go to the game, leave the game, just like any other fan. I don't really see it as a big deal. I never expected it to be a big deal. I mean, definitely would have been surprised if it became something more, but clearly it's not. Vasek doesn't seem to be wavering on his commitment. And if he was, then we'd probably be hearing something from, the coaches, Bates or Chavis and Venables about just reiterating their stance on don't take visits if you're committed to Oklahoma. And technically he just went to go watch a game.
Yeah, it would be totally different if he lived 4 hours away and he drove to the game. Might be a little bit of a different feel to it, but when you're right down the road, I just don't buy into it. And granted, you know what? At the end of the day, if he does flip to Texas, I'll eat crow. I just don't buy it, and this staff will not. I mean, I'm sure he was talking to Oklahoma staff the entire time and let them know, and just went through the whole process and just showed up to the game. We probably went to will call, claimed his tickets, went into the game with his friends, and maybe, some other Texas target recruits or whatever, because he plays for Westlake, and then just went to the game, and that was it. I don't think it's a whole lot. People need to chill out on Twitter. And if you're following Texas Twitter fans and that's getting you concerned, I mean, they're just talking, to stir the pot. So take a deep breath. It's going to be fine. He's going to be a Sooner. I guarantee it. So, I mean, you got the guarantee. So, yeah. I mean, I just don't understand it.
Don't listen to that Doc guy. I can't remember his Twitter name anymore, but just like we said, Arch Manning is probably going to visit sometime soon.
Yeah. I know Oklahoma fans probably have a lot of, they have PTSD from, flips from the past staff. Remember Anthony Evans, literally the morning of, he was going to be a Georgia Bulldog and he ended up committing to Oklahoma in the afternoon. So remember, this staff is not losing people left and right. They lost one guy in Ashton Cozart, and that's not really that big of a loss after the haul that they got in the wide receiver room. All right, so we'll move on to the next guy, and I'm sure that people have seen this. Jordan Renaud, 2023 four-star defensive lineman from Tyler, Texas. He got Fonged, whatever you want to call it. Steve Wiltfong crystal balled him to Alabama. And his announcement is on Monday, the 19th of September. It's between Oklahoma and Alabama. He took an official visit to Oklahoma this past weekend against Kent State. Everything went really well. I do think that he is truly torn at the end of it. It seems like his family wants him in Norman, but his heart and his gut might be telling him to go to Alabama. And he's just truly conflicted, I think. I think he's just dealing with the pros and cons. You'd be closer to Tyler, Texas, where he's living now. I know technically he's from Florida. So could Alabama, that's technically closer to home. It's one of those deals that he's going back and forth. And it's just like Anthony Evans. Obviously, Anthony Evans was conflicted and he ended up being a Sooner. I'm not saying that Steve Wiltfong's wrong. There's still a couple crystal balls in favor of Oklahoma here with Drum and Thune. Oklahoma got the last couple visits. I wouldn't be surprised if he picked either way. But I don't know. Something tells me that Oklahoma might be able to close this out just because of what, the track record is here. And maybe he'll really start thinking about how where his family wants him. And he might end up doing it. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, this one is interesting. It's definitely very much like Anthony Evans' recruitment. I definitely do not expect a ton of crystal balls coming in after Wiltfong's today. Oh, probably not till maybe like Saturday or Sunday morning. The couple days leading before his announcement date. I mean, at this point with Renaud, I think we have to. I mean, him choosing between Oklahoma and Alabama as a defensive lineman speaks to the potential of Oklahoma at the defensive line there, and we're definitely seeing the performance on the field. But I trust Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis to close the deal, and I would assume Jay Valai seems to be in a lot of recruitments, regardless of position. Seems like he really knows how to connect with these guys really well. So the tandem of Bates, Chavis, and Jay Valai, along with Brent Venables, I'm going to bet on that four. And I know we're betting against that Oklahoma. That four is going to win over Nick Saban, but Nick Saban did just come off of having a tough win over a Texas team that no one really expected to challenge them. So maybe that'll help Oklahoma a little bit, that I guess negative recruiting, whatever the term is for that. So at the end of the day, I think that he's picking out of two excellent programs that is a defensive lineman. I just think our coaching at the end of the day will win out, and the opportunities he has at Oklahoma are probably a little bit more, playing time that will come way sooner, maybe as a redshirt freshman or sophomore, rather than having to be in Georgia and potentially wait till you're a redshirt junior to get on the field.
Yeah, and they very well, Alabama could pick up, Keon Keeley. Obviously he decommitted from Notre Dame. And Jay Valai was his primary recruiter when he was at Alabama. So he's known him forever. I don't know. I do agree. We might see some crystal balls change towards this weekend. At the end of the day, if Oklahoma loses out on him, it's not the end of the world. Oklahoma's in a pretty solid, great spot with David Hicks. Got Derek LeBlanc on board. I mean, it's going to be okay. Obviously, we want Jordan Renaud, and hopefully he's a part of this class. But It is what it is at the end of the day. And I'd rather him pick Alabama now than commit to Oklahoma and then flip in 3 months. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off and just, pick wherever you want to go. And I do think that Oklahoma can close this one out. And I think they've given them a lot of stuff to think about.
Definitely.
So we'll move on to kind of some upcoming recruiting. Obviously, Peyton Bowen and Ryan Yates, Jackson Arnold, all of them were still there. Really no update on Peyton Bowen and Ryan Yates other than they enjoyed the visit, and I guess we'll just have to keep an eye on them. And there's not a whole lot to talk about them, but the losses for A&M and Notre Dame definitely do not hurt Oklahoma's chances. They probably help quite a bit, actually. So, but we'll talk about a couple guys that are going to be potentially visiting come October 15th, I believe, against Kansas. Caden McDonald, 2023 four-star defensive lineman. Derek LeBlanc, who's currently committed to Oklahoma. He's making his official visit. He was scheduled for Bedlam. Now he's going to go to the Kansas game. And there is a potential, not 100% sure, David Hicks could be one of those guys that takes an official in mid-October. And if you see him schedule his official visit for then and push it up because he's supposed to be there for Bedlam, it's going to look pretty good. My takeaway is, and also Tasili Akana will be there for October 15th, and he's scheduled for an official visit then. My takeaway is Derek LeBlanc's coming in to recruit these defensive linemen, and Tasili Akana being the edge player. He's coming in to try to lock him down, get him committed, and be a part of this team. I don't necessarily think that Caden McDonald is going to be a part of this class. I think Clemson probably ends up winning this out, and I think distance plays a factor in his recruitment. David Hicks, I think we've been saying it for a while. We feel as though that Hicks is going to be a part of this class more than likely. I'm not going to say it's 100% sure because nothing's 100% until they sign on the dotted line. And Tasili Akana, Oklahoma seems to be in a really good spot for him. I think that Kansas game, obviously OU should beat them by 50. It's going to be a big recruiting weekend, and I think it's pretty strategic to have Derek LeBlanc with him.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe Tasili Akana has recently visited Texas. At this point, it's an Oklahoma-Texas battle, just like it was for Petaway. And yes, their defense looked good, but I think our defensive line just looks they're at another level comparing him to Texas at this exact moment. I know he has his sister, I believe, goes to Texas right now and plays volleyball, if I recall. So he definitely has ties to being a Longhorn, but that does not take Oklahoma out, especially if we go back all the way to when we had Parker Thune on the first time on our show. He mentioned that is the guy that Venables has picked out of every single recruit in the country and said, you are the guy that I really want in this recruiting class. Not that he doesn't really want everyone else, but that is Venables' target right now. And when Venables goes after someone, his track record is pretty good. So I still feel confident that Tasili Akana will at least is still leaning towards Oklahoma. But anything can happen, like you said. You can't really rule anything out until they put their name on that piece of paper in December or February, whenever it is that they sign their letter of intent.
Yep. So still, Oklahoma, for the most part, is just closing out the 2023 class, putting the final touches on. Hopefully Renaud's going to be a part of this class. Hicks, Akana, maybe Caden McDonald. I mean, getting him on campus for an official, that might be a game changer, and that's why you do it. So something that we'll definitely be watching. Oklahoma overall for the Kent State game was solid. I do think the fact that Kansas State's at 7 p.m. Will play a factor, and we'll get a lot of recruits on campus. It's a benefit to Oklahoma. Maybe not necessarily official visits, but just unofficial, and them being able to drive up for the game. And you might see more guys than you would have compared to an 11 a.m. kickoff, which is always a benefit. So that's all I think about whenever we get 7 p.m. kickoffs or 2:30, more recruits. It makes it more feasible and logical for recruit. I mean, it's the ability to show up to Norman is a lot better. But that's all I've got. Do you have anything, or do you want to do the Jose in the video challenge?
Let's just roll into the end of video challenge. So today we're gonna make it pretty simple. What are your score predictions for the Nebraska Oklahoma game? You heard both of us. We think Oklahoma will end up pulling away at the end and win in double digits. Do you think it'll be a closer game? Do you think Oklahoma's going to absolutely blow them out and win by 50? Let us know what you think.
What's your score prediction? I said 38-24. Did you mention it? Did I just forget?
I didn't give it a specific score prediction. I just think
Okay.
Oklahoma pulls away and covers. I really don't see Nebraska scoring more than 21.
Yeah, I got you. All right. Well, if you made it this far, I feel like it was a pretty solid video, game preview, a lot of recruiting talk. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to do the Jose in the video challenge and tweet the hashtag for Heath Ozaita to get him to the All-American game. Enter into our ticket giveaway, and be sure to check out our monthly membership as well if you'd like to help support us. And be sure to join the live stream at 9 a.m. Central on Saturday morning for our pregame show. And, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and Apple, Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. And we will see you guys on Friday.